Welcome to Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation. Welcome back to Talksicology. Best podcast in the world as far as I'm concerned. Best podcast that I host, at least. Here we're going to be talking about all things addiction, recovery, mental health, amongst other things. I talk a lot about music, talk a lot about skateboarding, and all things that make the world go round. Clearly, it's just me today. Joseph is off on a long overdue vacation. So Joseph, we hope you're having fun wherever you are. I don't even know where you're at, man. We don't get to talk that much. It's all on-air persona, Joseph and I. We don't talk at all off air. It's all for show. First recorded podcast of 2024. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but Happy New Year to everyone, and hope that 2023 was good to you, and hope that 2024 is going to be better. Got some questions fielded to us, to Joseph and I through the podcast, regarding New Year's, people in early recovery and or people who relapse around the new year. It seems to be a trigger for those who might be in their first couple months, that New Year's Eve, if they're, party people, that most of us in recovery are, or at least at one time were. I know for myself personally, the party was over many years. The party had been over for a long time before I got clean. I wasn't celebrating at any parties. I was, held up in a bathroom by myself, for that was my existence, but a lot of people in early recovery, they are still in that kind of habit. Like, if you're going out, what do you do with your hands? Is it hard to not have a drink, to whatever, just to navigate around something like that? And it is a difficult situation. So the question had been fielded to us. How do you do it? At this point, it's too late to talk about what you're going to do at your first, New Year's Eve party. But what do you do if you did have a slip up on New Year's and, you're wondering how to get back? And I guess this could go for any time of year. If you're, in early recovery and you do make a decision at a point, maybe a bad decision, or maybe it is whatever it was that brought you back to a slip or a relapse, whatever you want to call it. And in my personal opinion, it happens. I mean, you're looking at somebody who did not get clean and or sober their first 20 attempts. The 20th attempt, yes. But took me many years of getting it together for a short amount of time, or at least cleaning up for a little bit, and then making a bad decision, and then all of a sudden I'm back in that vicious cycle. So my advice to somebody is, if you did have a slip up, just get back as soon as possible. The shame and guilt that come with it can keep someone sick for a long time. I know things like that would keep me sick for a long time, because people would think that I was clean, and then I would show up somewhere clearly not clean, and then I felt this shame and guilt, and then it was this cycle of, oh man, I'm embarrassed, this sucks, these people think I'm a loser. So what better way to not feel like a loser than to keep doing drugs and drinking? It's one of those things where it's like, the only way, and this was somebody had explained it to me, the only way to get out of the merry-go-round is to get out of the merry-go-round. Otherwise, it's just the same thing over and over again. So, if you did have a slip up, just get back up, man. Do it again. You could do it. You've already done it for whatever short amount of time, or you're thinking about doing it and you haven't done it yet. Just just do it. Give it a try. And the good thing is there are plenty of people who are gonna help you. You know, let's not even professionally. Like, you go to any 12-step meeting in the world and you reach out, and somebody is going to be there to help you out along the way and give you some suggestions on how to do things. You do not have to do this alone. That's one of the greatest things about recovery, is that if it's happened to you, it's most likely happened to somebody else, and you go and ask for help, and somebody could share their experience with you, and hopefully you could take whatever suggestions that are given to you and get back into the motions of things, you know? And as far as talking about like your first New Year's Eve or whatever, first experiences that you go through when after getting in recovery. For me, the first concert I ever went to, the first show I ever went to, after I got clean, was so uncomfortable. And it was an artist that I really wanted to see. And I got there, and it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I think I've ever encountered. And from somebody who grew up going to shows, I mean, I grew up going to concerts when I was, I can't even remember. I think I was 4 the first time I went to a concert, because, my parents in the music business. So I was raised around that stuff, and then started going to punk rock and hardcore shows, and been to thousands. And once I got clean and I didn't know what to do with my hands, I didn't know how to interact with people. It was a little bit overstimulating, and I just kind of like stayed in the back, stayed to myself, drank a ton of Red Bulls, and got really fucking jittery, and felt my pits were all sweaty. And then the artist came on, I enjoyed it, and then I got the fuck out of there and went home. And it's like, do I even enjoy going to shows? Is this something that I've ever really liked, or was I just so fucked up all these years that I was just out partying? But then I went to another one, and it got a little bit more comfortable. So it's these are tough things to navigate in early recovery. So, and if you're struggling with it, or somebody is, there's plenty of ways that you could do. You could go in groups. That's a big thing I recommend. I know that they have the bar crawl things. What they do now is they'll get people who are in recovery, and they'll do similar ones and go and have mocktails, or just meet up groups, or if there's a band playing, get a bunch of your friends who are in recovery, or people who just don't drink, and go with them. And there's ways to do this. And, that goes for everything. You find people who have similar interests, and then you could, gravitate towards them a little bit more. Do positive things and go out and have fun. That's what it's all about. Go out and have fun. Okay? All right. So we got that out of the way. Enough of my personal jibber jabber here. Today we have a guest on who I've known for a few years now, and he was. I'll let him get into it, because I like hearing his voice. He's a cool guy to talk to. I enjoy talking to him. Every time I go to Nashville, I get to see him, and I will let Mr. Joey Grant tell his own story. So, welcome to the show, Joey Grant. There he is, Mr. Joey Grant. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. And blessed. Beautiful.
And Joey is now he's in Nashville, Tennessee. He's coming to us live from the Recovery Unplugged Center in Brentwood, Tennessee, close enough. And that place is pretty special to you, isn't it?
Man, very, very. It's been in my life for almost half a decade now.
Jeez, it's been that long? Holy crap. I guess so. So I didn't go over this in the intro, but Joey is client 0 for Recovery Unplugged Nashville. He was the first ever client to walk through the doors at Recovery Unplugged Nashville.
Yes,
And
sir.
and when was that?
Well, I say I was client one, but I did what I do and slipped. So I'm patient 0 and 1. But the first time was the first time was November of 2019 or October of 2019.
Right, right. Yeah, that's right. I remember we went out there for the grand opening. I remember you being out there in the crowd when we had the Zach Brown band playing and stuff, and you were
Yes,
so
sir.
that must have been a pretty cool experience though. You go into a treatment center and they have this huge party and you could almost be like, oh, this is all for me. Like they're having a huge event here.
They put this together for me.
Right?
Yeah. Man, it was awesome.
That's cool. So before we get to that stuff, um let's get into your life, man. Why don't you paint a picture of what childhood was like for Joey Grant? Where'd you grow up? What was it like?
I grew up in Springfield, Tennessee. It's about 30 miles north of Nashville. Born and raised. It's where I've always lived. Um, I have 2 older sisters, and for the first 5 years of my life, what I can remember, it was a good home, mom and dad, and then a divorce happened, some substance abuse with my parents, and kind of split the family apart, and a little chaos ensued. And when I was real young, I didn't know the difference. I thought, that was life. And as I got older, looking back, I could see, that this wasn't normal.
Right.
But I was a happy child. I made the best of whatever happened. I was always laughing and having a good time. My parents loved me, no doubt, and taught me love. And it was fun growing up.
So when your parents split, did they both stay in the same town? You were still or were you going back and forth?
Um, my my dad, he went away for a little while
Okay.
for treatment, and I stayed with my mom a little bit, and then once he got his bearings back, then we would go in between mom and dad somewhat. It was
And I'm imagining this is a pretty small town that you were living in.
it's not too small. It's the seat of the county that sits above Davidson,
Okay.
which is Nashville. So it has the courthouse, and it's the main center, and a lot of people travel there to work in Nashville. So it's not a small town, but it's not a very large town.
Gotcha. So what was it like growing up there? What kind of things did you do?
Man, I have been a habitual line stepper since I can remember. And
Yeah.
when I lived with my mom, I rode the bike wherever I could in town. It had the projects in the center, and that's where my mom was raised, coming from Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I could do just about whatever I wanted with my mom, and that looked like just being a nuisance when I was a little kid. When I was a teenager, when I would go with my dad, it would be all business. He worked all the time. He was a plumber. I would go to work with him. We'd go get Sprite and beef jerky from the gas station. I'd climb around houses that were being built, and then I'd go to my mom's. And as I was getting older, the hurt that I had, I didn't know what to do with it, and I would just give it out or cause some disruption. That's what I would do with it. That's why I say a habitual line stepper. I believe that's what that comes from. I just had some hurt or some dis-ease,
Right.
and it made it feel better.
Gotcha. So acting out, that was kind of your ism. The first thing was kind of channeling whatever you were feeling inside and causing a little bit
Yeah.
of trouble. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
like me, drugs or whatever substances seem to be around you almost as long as you could remember, correct?
Right.
So what I remember too, and what I always tell my friends who have young kids is like, kids aren't fucking stupid. They know what's going
Mm,
on. Like they might not know exactly what's going on, but they know something is not right. They know something
right.
that something is changed. Either when you're on these substances or when you're going and hiding in the bedroom for all these amount of times, or when you just go on a run, like, there's something that's off. There's something that isn't right. And kids do pick up on that way more than a lot of people would hope, because I know. So my dad, my parents got divorced before I could remember, and I went to go stay with my dad in California, and I did that thing when you like would pretend like you're asleep, so your parents would pick you up and like take you around and everything. And he took me on a deal with him, and I was like pretending like I was sleeping, and then woke up when I was in the car and getting back into the house, and I was like, "Oh, was that?" And I was probably like 4 years old, and I was like, "Was that cocaine that you bought?" And he freaked out that I knew what cocaine was. He didn't, it wasn't like, "Oh, my bad for doing this with my child in the car." It was like he was pissed that I knew what it was, and then like I had these resentments against my parents, like, "Oh, you do drugs, you must hate me. Like, why are you doing this?" So was it like that with you when your dad was doing his thing?
Oh, absolutely. That really, just sleeping, acting like I was asleep. Man, that you're exactly right. Doing that when I was young, and another thing when my uh, dad had to go away a little bit, and I lived with just my mom. My uncle moved in, and I remember smelling marijuana when I was 4 or 5, and knowing, that this smell, and I had to see what it was. One of these days, I'm going to find out.
Right.
Go in his room when he ain't here, and he did some other things, and yeah, it was very present, and it made a big impact. Every time I smell that smell, it takes me back to being a very young child, wondering,
Right. And then
putting a thought to it.
and then you'd get in trouble as a kid for trying to snoop around and be like, "You guys seem like you're having a lot of fun in there when you lock yourself in the bedroom for 3 hours. Of course, I'm going to want to find out what the hell's going on in there."
Right, absolutely.
So once you find out that your dad was doing whatever he was doing, but then got help for it, was that what was that reconciliation like? Did that make things? Did he make his amends to you? What was that like?
He's never made his amends, and after he had went to long-term treatment, I'd never seen him drink from the time I was 7 to I was probably 18 or 19. He
Mhm.
started drinking again, and he probably did it more often. But I had a more consistent father. The whippings slowed down. The not seeing him as much slowed down. He still worked a lot, but it got more structured, I would say. And with my mom, it never really got structured. So, dad being superhero, no matter what, and having the structure, I longed to be in that environment, even though I loved the freedom of the one with my mom.
Yeah.
But it did get better.
Yeah, man, that's one thing. We're a lot alike in those ways too. Like, I had a great childhood. You know what I mean? Like, loved to. My parents loved me. Like, there was never any doubt with that. But I didn't have any structure, and I think I acted out a lot, and I think I got a lot of character traits because of that. And it seems now in my recovery, like that's what I kind of long for. Like, I long for structure. I long for um routine, for discipline. Like, these are things I really didn't have. But like I said, when just like you, when I would go and stay with my dad, it was it was more just a once a year thing, because I was in Florida, he was in California. But I acted a lot different when I was around my dad. You know what I mean? Because one of the only times I really got hit was by my dad, and it was a misunderstanding. Like, he had said something to me, and I had never heard the term before or used in that in this way. But he's like, "Are you getting smart with me?" And I was probably not even in kindergarten yet. So all I'm thinking is like, you, like as a kid, like smart, that's what you want to be. You want to be smart. So I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what? And just smacked me. And I was like,
Oh,
what the,
gosh.
and then he's looking at me and he was like, are you still trying to get smart with me? And I'm just like, yeah, and crying. And he hit me
Oh,
again. And then I think
God.
about 3 times in, he saw my eyes and realized like I didn't know what that meant. And
Mm.
and I just saw his eyes well up and start tearing, and he just like hugged me. It was just like, I'm
Oh,
so sorry, but
man.
yeah. So I knew like he was capable of doing that, and then man, but that was I still think about that sometimes, like how terrible that must have felt for him, just completely
Oh,
not even.
God.
We weren't, there was a complete misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I took that in consideration anytime that I wanted to do something bad in front of them. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, okay, copy that. I'm not gonna fuck up here like I can with mom.
Right.
So once you started knowing that your dad has at least a knowledge of, substance abuse and getting things together, when did you start when did you start experimenting? What was that like? What were your first experiences?
I had and my mom did a lot of pills, not to the way my dad's drinking was, but that was another part of it. And she um, has some mental health issues, and I just remember there being medicine everywhere. Um, of course, when I was real little, I'd drink my dad's liquor and sneak and get his alcohol, and then my uncle, I finally did sneak and smoke his weed, but couldn't inhale it. Didn't know what I was doing. But when I was probably about 12 or 13, for most of my life, I resented alcohol, drugs, pills, all that kind of stuff for a little stretch, when I was going to be different. I wasn't, when I found out, I was probably 8 or 10 when I realized, or when I was told what happened with my dad and why they divorced and what happened. I had blocked a lot of that stuff out, I guess, or I just was aloof. I can't remember. But
Right.
when I found out, it was my mission to not do those things. And when I was about 13 or 14, me trying to deal with things and that disease or that hurt, the balloon under the water had finally got to the point where I needed something. And I started smoking weed, about 7th, 8th grade. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to do that stuff. Like, I resented it. And then at some point the switch went and I was like, let's try it. And it was on, about 12, 13.
What was the thing? Because I know that there's a line that's crossed where it's like, okay, this is what I'm not going to do. And then the one time when you're just like, all right, whatever, I'm going to try it. Do you remember what that was?
The biggest line,
Mm-hmm.
it was a little later on when I was probably about 20, 21, was heroin, meth. It was in a trailer that had been, they had squatted in, no power, no lights, and sitting on a bed. And I was definitely, at first it was just weed I wasn't going to drink. And then it was just, I'm not going to drink, or I'll just drink. I'm not going to do the pills. But that snowballed so quick.
Right.
But I held the longest line on the hard drugs and the IV use, all that kind of stuff. I held a line on that for a very long time. But that was the big one that I can really think about, it being like, man, that one was never going to go, and it went.
So before that, when you're still just smoking weed, and then it's just smoking weed and maybe drinking here and there and just popping a couple of pills, how long of a stretch was that? Was that like kind of your identity? Were you one of those kids who just got fucked up all the time? Like you were one of the party kids?
Yeah, from the 8th grade, till 16, 17, it was drinking and smoking, bringing weed to school, getting possession charges, underage. The pills didn't really start till about 16, 17, but yeah, I was a good, happy kid. I was always very popular and had a lot of friends and did good at school, But then around that eighth, ninth grade part, it was known that I did drugs or, smoked weed and drank and hung out with the older kids and got in trouble.
Yeah.
That's when that switch went off.
So a lot of times when you're in school and you have a lot of friends, that almost becomes something that supercharges one's popularity a little bit because, if there's a party, oh, call Joey. He could, Joey will be able to get stuff. Joey can bring stuff. Your social value could go up in situations like that. Was that your experience?
Mine was really, I guess, I hung out with older kids, and my particular peer group didn't really hang around me much, but I was the young, funny kid with the people 2 years older than me, and some of those guys I had grew up with. And living with my mom, I didn't have much support, and my two older friends who I'm still friends with today were my taxis. They were my dinner. They were my, they helped me tremendously, and me hanging out with them put me around older kids, and they got the stuff. But also my mom's house was a party house.
Okay.
So they could come over and drink, and, we could party and have no repercussions.
Yeah, I still have sort of a little brother syndrome thing with all my group of friends because I was the youngest guy by quite a few years with, kids that were much tougher than me, kids that were, but they took care of me. You know what I mean? I was like a mascot is what I felt because I was the same way. I could make them laugh. I was the funny little brother guy. I was protected by them, and it felt safe. Especially for somebody who maybe not having a father figure around constantly, that was a good way to have it. And, if it sounds like we had a shared experience with that, because that's what it was like for me too. So it was, I wasn't really messing with too many kids my age. I'd still hang out with the friends my age, but these were like the older, cooler kids, and they could pick me up and I could go hang out with them. And it was just like, man, this is cool. And it was, and I got to live in that for a long time.
It seemed like they always had, we couldn't all hang out at the same time, but every one of them needed somebody with them, at some point all the time. And I was down for anything. If I just had to sit there and ride around with you all day or sit at your house or whatever it was, I guess that's that mascot thing is I was there, I was willing to do whatever.
Were most of them good influences, or were there any that were veering more in the opposite direction?
There were some good ones, and bad ones, and I guess the best ones that are here today had their dabble with it for a little bit. One of them is in recovery and has more time than me, and we talk. We've been on the same wavelength. He went about as far as I did.
Okay.
But the other one just dabbled a little bit and pulled right back out. And some of them still drink all the time. Some of them have had a few DUIs in their 30s. There was I guess it was bad influences,
Yeah. Because where I grew up, there was a lot of, a lot of them got into dealing drugs. Some of them got into like cooler stuff. There was a lot of them that were into skateboarding. So that kind of kept me, I kind of gravitated more towards them. But then there were the ones that got really, really into the criminal element to when it was like, this is far beyond any like boyhood shenanigan shit. This is like real deal, like, these people are either getting murdered or going to prison and stuff. And I remember at one point, I was probably like 19 when I started noticing that. And I was like, whoa, like this is it's fun and it's cool and it's exciting, but I'm not equipped to deal with this shit. Like this is not like I do not, that's not me. I mean, I like this person, like being able to protect me and, being like somebody who I could call on if I get in trouble, but I'm not down to do the shit if you got to call me to do something. Like that's when it was like, I'm going to stick more towards the skateboarding and partying stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So let's go to that day where your line gets crossed. Tell me about how that happened in the trailer.
Ooh. Um, so I had been on community corrections, and that's like a very intense state probation.
Right.
I had gotten out of jail. I'd violated it,
Well, okay. So
and
what got you into jail?
um, stealing, stealing a firearm, lying to a detective, some DUIs back to back, got me on probation with those things. Advanced financial, stealing a debit card, calling a bunch of times.
Oh,
That was the community corrections.
so you started getting into the point where it was just you were just getting into you couldn't walk a straight line anymore. Like everything you were doing, there was a little bit of something, and you were getting caught a lot. You were
Oh
you were
yeah,
doing it a
just
ton,
all
or
coming
just
to a
getting caught
head.
almost every single time.
Yeah, no car, no license. Nowhere to go. It just
The law knew
and
the law enforcement knew you out there.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say so. Uh, yeah, and one of those times I got out, I went to a halfway house, like a real halfway house where they come in from prison
right out of
and they
prison,
take
and
you to
yeah,
work. They have a cafeteria. It's pretty rough in there, probably some bed bugs. I had nowhere to go, so I went there, and after about 2 months,
three bunk beds in a small bedroom.
oh, oh man, yeah, little rough, but it was the only place I could go. I met a guy in there. Um, I got kicked out of there at nighttime with all my stuff, which wasn't much, but I had collected some from the donation bags.
Right.
Um,
What'd you do to get kicked out?
and I started, I started getting high. I want to say I was snorting meth at my job with some of the guys that were there. And that was the point was getting closer where I was like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. I didn't like the feeling. I like to get sideways, but I just wanted to change the way I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it stressing me out, the anxiety, but I had nowhere to put it. And when I got kicked out, I followed that guy to a trailer park on Dickerson Pike in Nashville. And Dickerson Pike's a rough stretch. I've heard about it my whole life. And that's where we got in the trailer. And they were squatting, no lights, no power, doing meth. They were smoking it and stuff. And I was like, kind of interested in it, but also just that weight of, I shouldn't be here. This should not be happening. I've crossed so many lines up to this point, and they broke the needles out and the heroin. And I'd been snorting heroin or fentanyl, whatever it was, in 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of those nights, I decided, they didn't have nothing to snort. All they had was a needle. And I was like, well, I guess I gotta do it, and just, oh man, it was a dark place. That was the line that I was never going to do. The other ones I was never going to do, but they folded easily. That was one that I'd been offered a lot and been around quite a bit. But at this point, it was like, it still wasn't easy. And looking at it, I was like, I cannot believe I'm doing this at this, but,
So
and then that started a whole nother,
yeah, so
you know.
you're in a trailer. You clearly feel uncomfortable. I'm imagining that you have to have somebody shoot you up because you've never done it before. And what was that? The once it got into your bloodstream, what did it feel like?
I'd say, I want to say just how wonderful it was. But by this point, I was getting high with the weight of knowing that it don't have to be this way. So it wasn't as good as I had imagined my whole life. That's how it's been on every relapse. I think it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. Once I do it, I don't feel joy in it. It does make me feel better, but also I got this, the weight of it is strong.
So there was a darkness. I mean, it sounds like a pretty dark place too, where you're
It
getting
was
your
dark.
first experience with it too. So I imagine that had a lot to do with it. So it hit you. What are you thinking Are you thinking this is me now? This is the decision that I've made, or I don't, is this sustainable? What's going through your mind?
Hepatitis, HIV,
Oh yeah.
immediately.
So I mean,
That
yeah, usually the euphoria will take away any sort of fear and stuff. So you definitely had something tugging on you saying this is not right.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Going back, yeah, it was scary, and I felt the euphoric feeling, but those thoughts, I felt euphoric, but I wasn't thinking euphoric.
Yeah.
Um, and it was late at night. I remember we used to have to drag the mattress into the center of the room. I'd take clothes and jam them up under the door, and you could hear rats crawling in the walls. And if you open up that door at night, you'd see them just spread out. There'd be rats running across the parking lot as big as my boot, and using flashlights and stuff. It was like I said, squatting in a dang trailer, and it was just a dark, terrible place. I couldn't believe that it had gotten to that point.
How long did that last for? In the staying in the trailer.
Not very long, maybe it was very shortly after that that shoot up that I'd left the trailer and went to a faith-based program in Laverne, Tennessee.
Okay.
Started, and that's that IV use had started. That line had crossed. So, still years of going back to that place,
Right. So you went to the program in Laverne, and 30-day program, 60-day program.
It was really open-ended.
Okay.
It was strictly faith-based, and they'd let you come for free. That's the only reason why I went there. And we Bible study once a week. They would get us a job and drive us there. And we just pay the rent and hang out. And it was a good place. It helped me tremendously, for what it was. But I had nothing in place to you deal with life on life's terms beyond that.
Right, but you're setting a foundation at this point. You know that you didn't
Yeah,
want to go back to that what it felt like to live in that trailer, but you weren't putting in, it's early recovery. You only know what you know. So you're starting your way to where you are now. And so how long were you staying clean at these points when you would go into treatment?
well, when I went to Right Road Ministries, uh, and it was basically a sober living house, recovery house. It was the first time I stayed sober. Probably 8 or 9 months was how long I stayed sober that time.
That's
And that was the
significant.
first time besides jail. Yes. I got a taste that I can live life. I can make money and buy some clothes, and I can start paying these fines. And the mound that I've built of financial and bridges burnt and all these things, it does get better, and I can feel at ease. Something can ease this feeling, a little bit. That was the longest I'd stayed sober since I was 16, probably.
Yeah, that's an amazing feat in itself, and like when I was going over in the intro talking about people who relapse, and you know how easy it is to get back on that merry-go-round of shame and guilt and all that, and that's a big part of it, and these are the things that you learn when you're in recovery. It's like, relapse is a part of most people I know. Most people I know who are in recovery have had a relapse in there. And it's not beating yourself up over it, and it's not it's not excusing me if I were to go out and relapse today, obviously, but knowing anybody who does, like, okay, listen, it happened. Like that it's behind you now, and it could stay behind you if you get back up and start over again, but you have to start over again. So you put together 8 or 9 months, and then what happens?
I got a real good buddy that was living there, my best friend for the past 8 or 9 months. He was ready to move out, and I had that feeling in my gut, you know, shouldn't happen, and I did. And he had already started getting high a little bit. He was very good at hiding it, and I don't think I wanted to see it.
Right.
Mainly, anybody else who was high around me, I would have snuffed it out in a second, but I didn't really want to see it. And I moved out with him, and within a week I was drinking, and with 2, I was shooting up.
Mm-hmm.
I went and got some needles from the needle exchange.
And how long did this run last for?
Probably 4 or 5 months, and he ended up having to move out. Or no, it might have been a year.
Okay. And then from
It was
there, so somewhere between 5 months and a year, it's going on. And then what brought you brought you back to get help again?
I had actually started Suboxone. I'd had the same job for 2.5 years for the first time in a long time, or 2 years. I had insurance, and I moved out of that house with that roommate to a guy I worked with, and got on Suboxone, and it helped me stop going to the dope man. It helped me stop sticking needles in my arms. I still wanted to do it my way, so I was smoking weed and selling it and flipping it and selling some of the Suboxone, but it did get me out of that roommate situation where there was heroin and meth every day, and I didn't lose my job. And this is right around the time I got a girlfriend back home during this sober stretch on Suboxone, and we dated for a month, and she got pregnant.
Okay. And then, so then what happens now? You got a baby coming on the way. Are you starting to, that has to be a real slap of reality there.
Oh man. And that makes me think, like, where was that line crossed? I've always had these things where if I get this job, I'll stop doing it. I've had tons of good jobs. If I get this girlfriend, I'll stop doing it. That's what'll do it. The final line on that was, if I have a son, if I get to be the dad I never had, or a daughter, whatever it is, I didn't know what it was going to be, I will stop. I will find a way to do what I need to do. And I stopped doing Suboxone cold turkey at her house, at her parents' house, with her there, and wasn't a smart idea. I made it through it smoking weed and stuff, and then how long that same job.
How long was the Suboxone detox? Because I've been through that one before too.
It wasn't as long because I was doing quarters, so I could sell the other half. And by this point, it was probably a week. It was probably a week or two. It had its lingering effects, but I had been to jail so many times, whether on Suboxone or Opana or heroin, that it was very psychological to me now, where I'd never been detoxed. I'd never been to a medical facility for treatment up to this point. I was 28 years old. Never been into a medical facility, but I detoxed so many times from jail and repercussions like that. And I was willing. That was another part. Like, I did want to stop. I really wanted it. I had that fierce determination to win came back. It always did for a second. And I stopped at cold turkey with her. But then within a week or two, I'm drinking 6 to 8 beers on my way home to her from my job, just chugging 2x4s. I'm not a big beer drinker, but I had to change the way I felt. I tried to do it my way, and I wasn't very good at it. And then within a few weeks of drinking, I'm shooting heroin again, and she's 4 or 5 months pregnant.
So where does that bring you?
Then in February of 2019, I have that same job that I'd had for 2 or 3 years from the Right Road Ministries from the place in Laverne. That's when I got the job. And I went to the HR people. I said, I need help, and they put me on FMLA. They sent me to Bradford. They gave me 10 days of a medical detox. That was my first experience in treatment. And looking back, I'm very grateful for that. But during the moment, I was like, 10 days, I've been doing this hard for 16 years. I need to go somewhere for a while. But it was the insurance and the way my job was set up, I'm sure. I didn't have no money to pay anything. And so I go for 10 days. They put me on a taper with the Suboxone. I drive myself down there in a 95 Ford Ranger with no license. I didn't have no ride down there to Madison, Alabama. And ironically, it was almost 25 years to the day that my dad went to the same treatment center when I was about 7.
Okay.
In Madison, Alabama. I get out, I come back here. The goose hung high, or no, the first time I came back, I was detoxing. Right when I got to Nashville, I went straight to the dope man. Started again, went to PHP and IOP for a month, maybe, getting high. They sent me back to a place in Alabama, to a different place under the same company. And they gave me 5 or 7 days. And I kept on hearing the recovery thing, get phone numbers, get a sponsor, work the steps, all that. When I came back the second time, this is about March of 2019, second time in treatment. I start going to AA meetings. My son's about to be born. I get a sponsor. And then in May, he was born. I was sober the day my son was born, the week before maybe. And I'm sitting in the hospital room happy. I'm crying. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It was the one thing that was going to make me stop. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I'm getting high again. And the shame, guilt, remorse is incredible. But I had pressure. I had this, I always say, the beach ball that I was holding under the water, and it eventually busted. And when he's about 2 months old, his mom's just like, Joey, you can't be around him, because I go, I'm out there, IV, 140 pounds. I'm probably 200 now. I'm skin and bones, skeleton. She's like, you got to get help. By this time, I had lost that job in Mount Juliet that I'd had for a while with the insurance. And my son was just born. So about June, I'd finally had that truck, because I didn't have a car or license for 6 years. I had a truck, and I was going to go back to doing electrical work. I had done that in my late teens, early 20s, and made pretty good money doing it. It helped hold up my habit, and I had to stop doing it because I couldn't drive to a job site or anything. So, because of people in recovery, for that little stretch, my sponsor, he had a birthday party, and there was a few electricians there. And I asked him, what's the best company to work for in Nashville? And somebody told me. I applied at about 6 companies, but the one that guy told me is the one that called me back. And I started doing electrical work. And this is in the summer. I'm still in the middle of my addiction, just legging it until I can get some insurance to get in treatment. I want it. She's not letting me see my son. I remember I wore long sleeve shirts through the summer, working in this warehouse high up in the air with holes in my arms. It about killed me. And right when 90 days hit with the electrical company, they brought me my insurance papers, and I signed them. And I said, I need to go to treatment. Right after I signed them, I was chomping at the bit. My childhood buddy who had gotten in recovery had called me every day for months. Joey, you got to go to treatment. You got to go to treatment. And I'm like, man, I got to get insurance. I got to get, something rolling. And I remember that day that I signed the insurance papers, which, wasn't the most honest thing to do at the time, but they were like, yeah, you can go. That buddy who had been pressing on me called me, or I called him this time. It probably shocked him. He was waiting on that call because I'd been saying I'm going to go. And I said, man, I got insurance. He was like, all right, well, I'm going to pick you up. He was ready to go. and I'd called a few places, and then this is what leads to Recovery Unplugged. I called a few places, and they wanted money and stuff, and I had a buddy that went to Recovery Unplugged in Florida, and his older brother is still one of my best friends to today. Both those guys I'm talking about are best friends, and he called me and said, man, there's a cool place that's music based that I know you would love that's in Florida. You ought to check it out. And I looked on the website or on something, and I was like, man, that is nice, and I was worried. I always am scared to do something or think I'm not good enough, that shame, guilt, remorse, whatever. I don't know. Fear runs everything. But he told me that there's a new version of it opening up in Nashville. And I was like, oh, well, it's worth a try regardless. And out of all the places that I called, it was the only one that didn't need anything from me at the moment, and that was exactly what I needed. The other places needed something, pay wise or some, agreement or something. And Recovery Unplugged Nashville took my insurance, and, everything was good. They said, come on down, you can come today. And they kept on calling and checking on me like my buddy Cole would do to make sure I was still good. And it might have been that next day, Cole drove me to Brentwood. And I remember on the way here from Springfield, about 40-minute drive, I was so sick from the dope. My body was having a reaction, and maybe I was malnourished. But every time I would shoot up or do something, I would start throwing up. And then I would get a Gatorade or a water, and I couldn't help but chug it. I was just so malnourished and dehydrated. Within 10 or 15 minutes, I would throw that up. And then we'd have to stop again, get a different bag. I'd have to get a water. And then I swear we had to stop 10 times in that 40-minute ride to get to Brentwood, to Recovery Unplugged. And we pull up here. And man, I'm telling you, I was on my last leg. It was about to all fall apart. My body, my mental, my spirit, everything. Yeah, I was beat. And I remember walking in the front door, and they were excited to see me. I was their first patient. They got this place together. It did feel special. But if I'm being 100% honest, my anxiety and people happy to see me just wasn't, that first initial thing. It wasn't like, oh, yes. It was like, oh, man, I just need to lay down.
Right.
I need to sit down somewhere.
I need a detox for a few days.
I need a break.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. I'm so grateful, but I need a break.
Yeah. So that brought you where you're at right now. And, incredible story that brought you there. I know that you had a slip somewhere after you had a couple months clean, was it? The first time?
I had 14 months.
14 months. Okay, so you had over a year.
Yeah, 12, 13 months, something like that.
You had a little bit over a year, and then how long did that last for?
I think I got high for 2 or 3 days.
Okay. So
and went right back to RU.
In the big scheme of things, and you're using your decades of using 2 days, and then you came right back. You bounced right back. You went back into programming and just hit it like a newcomer and did what people suggested. And then now you're here, and what are you coming up on?
It'll be 3 years in 2 days.
Damn.
It'll be 3 years on the 4th.
Oh, goddamn, man. Happy anniversary. That's amazing.
Thank you, man.
And tell me what your life's like now.
Man, I tell you, I thought 2020 was the best year of my life. And that's, I tell people that, and that's COVID. But that was the longest stretch I'd had sober, past the Right Road thing. And it was right after RU, and I was bringing meetings, and I had rested on my laurels. And when I relapsed and came back, I went to the sober living house that I had done all the intakes on, but I was extremely humble and ready to do whatever it took. My life today, I imagined if I ever got a year sober, if I ever got 2 years sober, if I ever worked the steps and had sponsees, if I ever did H&I and kept on coming back, all that stuff, I had these big dreams and aspirations. I sold myself short on what those dreams and aspirations would be, because I have a peace and a serenity, and the intensity of bad moments, the intensity of bad days, the length of them aren't what I ever imagined was possible. And that's the most beautiful thing. I have a nice newer car. I graduated from Nashville State since then. I have a beautiful relationship with my son and his mom and my family and the people around me. I have a group of guys, that I was in my first wedding this year. A lot of things, and all the material, all the things that I imagined would make me free or set me free. There's something even greater than that. And I feel like they try to describe it and I can't describe it. It's serenity. It's peace. It's the fourth dimension, or I don't know. I don't want to be too cliche, but
Yeah, I know. And it's it's awesome when I get to go out to Nashville and see you guys, your group of friends that go to all the alumni meetings or the sober sessions out there. And it's just we've done an H&I together out there, and it's always just really cool, man, because you like found your tribe, like you got your group of guys that you hang out with, and you guys are just you guys are so cool to hang out with.
Thank you, man.
What does it feel like? Describe what it feels like to be able to give back to a community.
Oh my gosh, that's the greatest. It feels like I could run through a brick wall, after a long day and I'm tired and it's 7:00 at night or whatever that looks like. And I go and do it. And then somebody comes up after you or after you're done, or, you see the eyes during it. There's nothing that replaces that feeling of somebody saying, man, thank you. And it's the best feeling in the world. I used to think I had to give somebody something, or I had to sacrifice something for somebody to felt like they were rewarded from something I did. And it's not like that at all with recovery. It's the worst thing about me. That's what you're thanking me for, is because I can talk about this and enjoy getting what y'all give me. It's crazy. It's I could have never imagined that that's how it worked, but that's exactly how it works. I got my money back on all the chaos and all the BS, and it makes me feel better than any material thing that I thought I would attain.
And if you could tell me about what the Recovery Unplugged community is like.
Man, I last week or the week before, we went rock climbing. I've never been rock climbing in my life, and one of those indoor things. And I people see that I do these things, and I bring my son along, and I have some friends that I talk to all the time that I've known for 3-4 years because of this program. It's a big part of my life still to this day. Saturday was it? I think on Christmas I brought a meeting for H&I at Recovery Unplugged, because it will always be that place that loved me until I could love myself, and had people who loved me until I could love myself, and had people that showed up consistently over a stretch of time. It's like a home, it's family. It's a joy. When you reached out to me to do this, it's family. It's a joy. It's like, yeah, this is awesome. Still awesome.
Yeah, man, it
will always be awesome.
It is. And like that I got clean at Recovery Unplugged out in Florida, so it's like It's one of those things, man, where it's like I drank the Kool-Aid, man. I believe it. I believe this place works. Like you could tell me I'm cheesy. You could tell me whatever. It's a cult. I'm like, whatever. Okay, you've been you've been brainwashed. I was like, well, my brain definitely needs some fucking washing. So if that's what it is,
it's a good thing.
If that's what you want to call it, man, like my life is a million times better than when I was, shooting up in a bathroom and couldn't stop. And now like I get to travel around, meet people like you and do this kind of thing. It's like my life was, this was not in the books for me. I was supposed to be dead or wishing I was dead. Like that's what the disease of addiction wanted from me. It wanted me to wish I was dead. And it was like that for many, many years.
Man, I feel that in my bones.
Yeah. So, Joey, man, I love you very much. I can't wait to come out and see you again in person. But before we wrap up, we have what we like to call rapid fire question time.
It's rapid fire question time.
All right. First question. Supernatural experience, ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, any of it?
Ghosts. I guess supernatural. Does it have to be bad?
No, it could be good. It could be good.
I feel like recovery is supernatural. And it just keeps growing and things happening that it's like that's just not ironic. That is, that's otherworldly.
That's I had never even thought of it like that, but I always call it like the antenna. When I wanted trouble, I had the antenna up for bad shit and I always found it. And now that like it's up for good shit, like I find people that need help now. I'm able to get help from people when like I least expect it, like get out of all these crazy situations. But yeah. Okay, that's a good one. I like that. So Ben and Jerry's comes to you and says, we're going to give Joey Grant his signature ice cream flavor. What's in it and what do you call it?
I'd like some banana, chocolate, some caramel. I'd call it Juicy J's.
Juicy J's? All right. When was the last time you got to really do something for yourself?
Man, went to the gym yesterday. That's something. I went shopping over Christmas and got some new shoes. Treated myself. I do something for myself quite often these days. I care about Joey.
Yeah,
I love Joey, and that's something that I used to not be able to say or do anything for. It happens, quite a bit now. If I'm being honest.
What's the funniest thing your son has ever said? Because he's talking now, right?
Oh, gosh. He hit me with oh, okay. I'm spitting my sunflower seeds in a bottle. And he likes sunflower seeds too because I eat them. But I also dip. So I was sitting in the bottle. I hand it back there because he's going to spit his in it. And he says, "Ooh, that smells awful." And I asked him, what's awful? Like, definition, because I was like, where did he get this word? It's awful. He said, that smell. He didn't understand. I was asking him to define awful.
Right.
I just said, what's awful? That's awful. like the smart Alec comment.
Yeah. You're trying to get smart with me?
Says, yeah, man, he says so many funny things. I wish I could think of them all. The rapid fires got me all, but that really cracked me up. That's awful. I was like, dadgum, describe it. Use it in a sentence.
Awful.
And he wouldn't do it. That's awful. That's all you need to know. End of story.
All right. And what is your last question? What is your go-to? If you had a song that would that you could say was your recovery theme, what would it be?
Oh, recovery theme. Man, there's a song by Jelly Roll, and I just like it, called "Believe."
Mm-hmm.
That would be one of them. which I don't know if it's recovery based, but
if you interpret it as that recovery basic, it's recovery based. That's because there's plenty of songs that I'm sure have nothing to do with it, or maybe even mean the polar opposite. Where I'm like, you know what, this makes me feel like this. Like this is how I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take this as a recovery song.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Well, Joey, I thank you so much for your time, man. I will be seeing you in person soon, and look forward to it. Give your son a hug for me, and I can't wait to see you again, man. Thank you for doing this. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry. Do you have any closing words? Any words of wisdom or suggestions that you'd like to give out there to anybody watching, maybe somebody who's still going through it?
Gosh, it gets better, and if it didn't, I wouldn't do it. The crazy times, the good times, the euphoria never match to what recovery equals, or I wouldn't do it. And one of my favorite quotes, and I have a bunch of them, but I heard Cat Williams. They asked him what was his favorite quote, or what's the worst advice he was ever given, and it was never change. It was the worst advice he was ever given. And that implies that change is okay, and I need to continue growing. It's not that I'm a bad person or I'm wrong, but if it gets better, I get better. And that implies change is possible, and it can end up pretty beautiful.
That's awesome, man. Again, I appreciate your time, man, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you. Love you, man. Thank you.
Love you too, buddy. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode, and we will be back with you right here when we come back to you. Have a good one.